My daughter sent me a text 3 weeks before her wedding, the wedding I was writing a $40,000 check for. "You can still come if you're paying," she wrote, "just not front row." I read it once, then I read it again, then I typed back 6 words so calm they scared even me. "Then I'll keep my $40,000. She called 40 minutes later, crying so hard I could barely make out the words. But by then, it was already too late, because the second I hit send, I did not sit down and cry. I picked up the phone and I called my attorney. And my attorney had already been making quiet preparations for weeks, preparations none of them knew about, buried inside contracts they had never bothered to read carefully, because they had assumed a cleaning woman would not know the difference. By the time Keisha was sobbing into the phone, asking what I had done, the deposits were already reversing. The Fox Theater, the caterer, the florist, every vendor whose contract had my name on it, and my name was on all of them. The grand Washington family wedding, the one the society page had already written about, the one where I had been assigned row 6 and a dress code that said nothing too attention-getting, it had quietly, completely come apart. Here is how a woman they called just the cleaning lady took back $40,000 and her dignity in the same afternoon. Welcome to today's story, where the woman they treat like the help is almost always the one holding the contract. Stay with me all the way to the end. You will not want to miss what happens in that room in Buckhead. Drop a comment and make sure you subscribe. But for you to understand why I wasn't surprised, not even a little, you need to know who I am and what I built with these hands. My name is Loretta Hayes, 64 years old, dark-skinned black woman from Macon, Georgia, youngest of 5. My mother cleaned other people's houses. My daddy drove a delivery truck until his back gave out. I moved to Atlanta at 22 with $60 and a stubbornness that surprised even me. My first job was mopping floors at a dentist's office on Route 9 in Smyrna. Keisha was 4 years old. Her father had packed a bag and disappeared before she could say his name. It was just us. One bucket, one car with a heater that worked when it felt like it, one mother who was not going to quit. 35 years later, Hayes Commercial Cleaning has 60 employees, office buildings in Midtown, medical centers in Decatur, a school district in Clayton County. 8 vans with my name on the side. My hands are rough, my knuckles are swollen. My back reminds me every single morning what I have asked of it. I built something real, from almost nothing, with these hands. And yet, 2 people decided those hands were not good enough to sit in the front row of a wedding those hands were paying for. Now. The night it all started, the night I finally stopped looking away, I had gone to my kitchen drawer looking for a pen. Just a pen. What fell out instead was a letter. Folded in thirds, cream paper, neat, deliberate handwriting. The kind you learn at a school where penmanship still matters. Vivian, Washington. My daughter's future mother-in-law, dated 8 months earlier. Dear Loretta, we are so grateful for your generous support in making this occasion possible. We do hope you understand your place in these arrangements and trust that everything will proceed smoothly. Your place. I had tucked that letter away 8 months ago because I did not know what to do with the feeling it gave me. I told myself I was being too sensitive, that Vivian came from a different world, that different worlds have different manners. But holding that letter on the same night my daughter had told me to sit in row 6, I finally let myself understand what I had been refusing to see for months. They had planned this from the beginning. The money, yes, but the erasure, too. That letter meant the text from Keisha was not a moment of weakness, not a careless word from a stressed bride. It was the ending of a plan that had been running for 8 months. And I had been funding it the entire time. I still had my work apron on, lemon cleaner and something sharper underneath, soaked into the cotton the way it always does. I sat down in the kitchen chair with the wobbly left leg I keep meaning to fix, and I let myself cry. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind that comes when something you already knew in your bones finally shows up in writing. There is a name for that particular pain, when betrayal arrives not as a surprise, but as a confirmation. When you realize you have known for a while and kept choosing not to see it. That is the harder grief, because it means accepting that the comfortable story mattered more to you than the true one. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. Then I sat up straight. Because I did not build what I built by staying on the floor. I want to ask you something before we go any further, and I mean this genuinely. If your own child sent you that text, would you pay anyway? Or would you walk? Drop your answer below. I think you will surprise yourself. What I discovered in the days that followed was not just about a wedding. It was about something far more calculated, and it had been in motion for a very long time. When Keisha called to tell me she was engaged to Marcus Washington, I felt something close to real joy. It was a Thursday evening. I could hear that bright, full sound in her voice, the one she had as a little girl running home with a perfect spelling test. I sat on my back porch in my housecoat, coffee going cold in my hand, and just listened. Marcus was 30, financial consulting in Buckhead, came from what Keisha called a very established family. That phrase should have told me something, but love makes mothers generous with what they choose to hear. I met Vivian Washington for the first time at dinner at Bones Restaurant on Piedmont Road. Silk wrap the color of old money, gold earrings the size of small fists. She shook my hand with her fingertips, barely, and smiled the smile of a woman who had already made up her mind about me before I walked in. I wore my good navy dress and low heels. I had washed my hands 3 times trying to get the smell of industrial cleaner off them. It did not fully go away. It never does. Over dinner, Vivian mentioned 4 times that Marcus attended Morehouse on a merit scholarship. Twice that their family had a membership at the Cherokee Town and Country Club. She did not ask me a single question about my business. Keisha sat between us, laughing at everything Vivian said, biting her bottom lip when there was a silence she did not know how to fill. I drove home alone on I-85, radio off, thinking, this woman sees me as a problem to be managed. What I understand now is that Vivian had assessed me within 10 minutes of that dinner. My money had value. My presence did not. That kind of calculation is not uncommon, but it is a particular cruelty when it is performed on a mother by the family her child has chosen. 6 weeks later, Keisha called about the budget. The venue, the Fox Theater on Peachtree Street. Chandeliers like frozen waterfalls. I had taken Keisha there at 9 to see The Lion King. She wore her Easter dress and gripped my arm through the whole second act. The catering quote made me blink twice, but I said yes. Because she was my daughter. Because I had not missed a single school play, a single graduation, a single moment that mattered, even on 4 hours of sleep and whatever was left in the pantry. My attorney, Sandra Freeman, spread the contracts across my desk at my Memorial Drive office, sharp as a letter opener, bob haircut. Reading glasses she peers over when she is not asking a question. She is making a statement. You are the responsible party on every single one of these, Loretta. Venue, caterer, floral, your name, your liability. I know, I said. She looked at me over those glasses. Then, quietly, without ceremony, she made sure every contract I signed included a specific clause. Material breach of good faith, right to recoup costs in the event of a documented family dispute. I did not fully understand what she was doing at the time. Sandra did. The wedding invitations went out with the Washington family crest on the envelope. The local society page called it a Washington family occasion. My name was nowhere. When I mentioned it to Keisha, she said, Mama, Vivian just has a vision for the aesthetic. It's not personal. I nodded, swallowed it. My hands gripped the phone a little tighter. The humiliations came after that in small, careful doses. First, a wine tasting on West Paces Ferry Road. I mispronounced something French. Vivian corrected me, gently, with a small musical laugh, in front of the event coordinator and 2 friends from the club. I smiled, said nothing. My jaw ached for 2 days. Second, Keisha texted me a dress code. Elegant, but understated. Dark tones preferred. Nothing too attention-getting. I am the mother of the bride. I paid for the entire event, and I was being asked to disappear into the background of a room I had purchased? Third, At the Fox Theater walkthrough, the venue coordinator greeted Vivian warmly when she arrived just behind me. "And you must be Keisha's mother." She took Vivian's hand. Vivian smiled and did not correct her. I was standing 2 feet away in my company polo, my name embroidered in yellow thread on the chest, invisible as furniture. What Vivian was doing had a shape, even if I did not have the word for it then. Each humiliation taken alone could be explained away. Together, in sequence, they formed a pattern as deliberate as a blueprint. Vivian Washington was not careless. She was architectural. Then the seating chart arrived, an accidental email forward. My seat? Row 6. The label? Mother's side, Loretta. No last name, no title. A category. I called Lupe Thompson that night, best friend since our daughters shared a 2nd grade classroom at Tuskegee Airmen Global Academy. Built like a warm Sunday afternoon, has not told me a comfortable lie in 20 years. She looked at that chart across my kitchen table and set her sweet tea down slowly. "Loretta, you are funding a wedding where they have listed you like a vendor." "She is still my daughter," I said. "Your daughter is sitting at the head table, while you sit in row 6, with a label that doesn't even include your last name." I folded the chart, put it in my purse. When I asked Keisha about it, she said something vague about Vivian and an old friend of Marcus's father needing that row. She said she would look into it. She never did. That same night, driving home, an unknown number texted my cell. "Mrs. Hayes, be careful. Vivian Washington has been asking questions about your business accounts. She is looking for leverage. If you try to pull out, she plans to make things difficult for you, professionally." I pulled into a gas station on Glenwood Avenue and sat under the fluorescent lights for 10 minutes, engine running, hands on the wheel. Somebody knew something, somebody close enough to warn me. At 11:04 that same night, Keisha, "Mama, can you just let the chair thing go, please?" I opened my filing cabinet. I called Sandra Freeman, because something in me had finally gone quiet in a different way. Not the quiet of swallowing pain, but the quiet of a decision settling into place. And those two silences feel completely different. One costs you everything, slowly. The other is the beginning of getting it back. What Sandra told me about those contracts was something none of them had seen coming. Sandra picked up on the second ring. 11:09 at night. She sounded like she had been waiting for this call. "Tell me everything," she said. I read her the anonymous text, told her about the seating chart, the letter, "We do hope you understand your place." I heard her pen moving on the other end, steady, not rushing. Then silence, the kind that comes right before something conclusive. "Loretta, the contracts list you as sole responsible party. That gives you full legal authority to initiate cancellation proceedings if you can document a material breach of good faith." Can I document it? "Excluding the woman paying for everything from the front row of her own daughter's wedding," Sandra said, "while that wedding is publicly branded as another family's occasion, while that family investigates your finances for leverage? Yes, I would argue that qualifies." I sat on the edge of my bed. Keisha's kindergarten graduation photo on the nightstand. Tiny blue cap, gap-toothed grin, both small hands gripping mine. "Start the process," I said, quietly. "No money moves yet, just prepare." "Already doing it." I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment. Not victory, not relief. Grief. Plain, adult grief for the version of this story I had wanted to be true. The version where Keisha was just young and in love, where Vivian was difficult in the harmless way some mothers-in-law are difficult, where $40,000 was love freely given between people who respected each other. That version was not true. And choosing to finally see it clearly, after months of choosing not to, costs something real. It costs the comfortable story. Those stories, even the false ones, are not easy to set down, but clarity is a form of self-respect. The moment you stop rearranging your own perception to protect someone else's comfort at the expense of your dignity, that is not hardness. That is health. The next morning, the Fox Theater's events office received a certified letter. The caterer got a formal correspondence. The florist got a preliminary notice of contract review. Not cancellations, not yet. Just movement. The sound of gears turning. Quiet, professional, entirely within my rights. At 3:17 that afternoon, Keisha called. I was in one of my company vans on Campbellton Road, answered on Bluetooth, hands on the wheel. Mama! High and tight, the voice she used at 9 when she had broken something she was not supposed to touch. The caterer called Marcus. There is some kind of legal review. I am reviewing my contracts, I said, as the responsible party, which I am. Mama, you are going to ruin everything. Keisha. Level, calm. I have paid for a wedding where I am seated in row 6 and asked to wear something that will not draw attention. I need you to hear what you are asking me to accept. Silence. Then, in the background, low and urgent, almost a hiss, Marcus's voice. Don't say anything about the loan. I kept my eyes on the road. What loan? I said. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Sandra called me that evening with information that rearranged everything. Marcus Washington, the financial consultant, the Morehouse man, the expensive watch, had a serious debt problem. He and Vivian had leveraged their home on Andrews Drive 18 months ago, behind on payments, obligations to 2 private creditors. One of those creditors, through a chain of subcontracts through a facilities management company that worked with Hayes Commercial Cleaning, was connected, structurally and legally, back to me. I was not simply their future mother-in-law. I was, in the most inconvenient and legally verifiable way imaginable, adjacent to being their creditor. The $40,000 was not a gift graciously received. It was a pressure valve, a way to maintain the performance of prosperity long enough for what exactly? Get married? Hope the money worked itself out? Paper over a foundation that was cracking underneath? Let me tell you what that realization felt like. It felt like watching a photograph develop in reverse. Everything I had read as generosity showed its other face, calculation. Vivian had not been rude because she was careless. She had been rude because she had already decided I was a resource, and resources do not require courtesy. They require compliance. This is what manipulation looks like from the inside. It does not announce itself. It arrives wearing the costume of social preference and family tradition, and it counts, very deliberately, on your love being stronger than your self-protection. Vivian had read me correctly. She knew a devoted mother when she saw one. She knew a woman who had sacrificed for 35 years would sacrifice a little more if the ask was wrapped in the language of love and doing right by Keisha. What she had not accounted for was Sandra Freeman, and the fact that there is a limit, even in the most devoted mother, and that once reached, the woman standing on the other side of it is not the same woman who started. I pulled into my driveway on Constitution Road and sat in the dark. My daughter was about to marry a man who was financially drowning, at the direction of a woman who had been using my money as a life raft, while making certain I sat far enough back that nobody would connect the elegant occasion with the woman in the company polo who had paid for all of it. I was not a guest. I was a line item. Keisha knocked on my door at 7 the next morning. Knocked, not used her key, though she still had one. That small thing told me everything. I opened the door in my housecoat and let her in without a word. She sat at my kitchen table, where she had done homework for 12 years, where I had braided her hair on Sunday mornings, where we had eaten Christmas breakfast on the good plates every single December 25th, no exceptions. She looked like she had not slept, amber eyes heavy, hair in a hasty knot. "Mama," she said, "tell me what you know." So I did, all of it. Sandra, the contracts, the anonymous warning. Then I slid the letter across the table. Cream stationery, neat handwriting. We do hope you understand your place. She read it once, twice. The little muscle in her jaw, the one she got from me, not her father, pulled tight. She wrote this 8 months ago, Keisha said quietly. Before I signed the first contract, I said. She set the letter down, stared at it. Then, Marcus told me last week his mother had been helping manage some family finances. He said it was temporary. Keisha, what do you actually know about Marcus's financial situation? Really know? Her eyes filled. She bit her bottom lip, the habit she has had since she was small when she is trying not to let something out. Not enough, she whispered. I don't know enough. I reached across that table and put my hand over hers. My rough, swollen, calloused hand over her smooth one. She looked down at it. I watched something move through her face. Slow, fundamental, like a tide turning. She was seeing my hands, really seeing them, maybe for the first time in years. You deserve to know everything, I said, before you say I do. Vivian called my cell at 8:45 that evening. I was finishing a site inspection off Marietta Street. Atlanta skyline lit through the windshield, that smell of cleaning solution in the air all around me. She left a voicemail. Controlled, smooth, but with the specific tightness of a woman who has realized her plan has hit a problem she did not account for. Loretta, I think we've had a simple misunderstanding. Keisha is a little upset. I do hope we can resolve this quietly, for everyone's sake. It would be such a shame if this created complications, for the event, and perhaps for your business reputation as well. For your business reputation, the leverage the anonymous text had told me to expect. A threat dressed as concern. I listened once, then called her back from the driver's seat, engine running. That smell. The one I had once washed my hands 3 times trying to hide before dinner at Bones Restaurant, soaked into everything around me. I was not hiding it anymore. She picked up on the 3rd ring, voice already warming for a negotiation. Loretta, I'm so glad you... No, I said, just that. 1 word. I ended the call, put the van in drive, went home. Because some answers do not need to be long. They only need to be certain. And the word no, spoken without apology by a woman who finally understands her own value, is one of the most complete sentences in existence. But Vivian Washington was not a woman who accepted a 1-word answer quietly. And what she did 4 days later, in front of 40 people, was the moment everything changed forever. 4 days later, Vivian organized what the invitation called an intimate family gathering at her home on Andrews Drive in Buckhead. 40 people, catered, flowers everywhere, wine in crystal glasses. Keisha asked me to come. The way she asked, watching my face carefully, told me she was not entirely sure what was about to happen. I put on my good navy dress, my low heels, left the company polo at home. Vivian met me at the door with a smile that touched everything on her face except her eyes. Guided me, gently, precisely, toward the back of the room. I let her, because I had learned by then to let people show me exactly who they are. 20 minutes of pleasantries, then Vivian tapped her crystal glass. She spoke about the wedding, about Marcus, about the beautiful future ahead, the practiced fluency of a woman who has never doubted her right to hold a room. Then, almost as a casual aside, of course, we've had a few logistical hiccups with some vendor arrangements recently, someone getting cold feet about financial commitments they made. Several heads turned, not toward Vivian, toward me. I understood then exactly what this gathering was. Not a celebration, a tribunal. And I had walked in my navy dress, and I was the defendant who had not been told the charges. Sometimes, Vivian continued, warm as ever, people who are not quite accustomed to occasions of this nature can feel a little overwhelmed, feel that the commitment is larger than they anticipated when they offered. She looked at me when she said it, just for a moment, just long enough. What Vivian was doing required no direct accusation. She simply built a frame. Someone is being difficult, someone doesn't quite belong, and let the room's eyes do the rest. It is a technique that relies on the target's desire to avoid a scene. It only works if she stays quiet. What Vivian had not accounted for was that Keisha was in that room. And Keisha had spent 4 days sitting with the truth. My mother signed every contract. Keisha's voice came from near the fireplace. Standing straight, phone in hand, shoulders back, chin level. She had not dressed casually. She had dressed for work, blazer, good shoes, like she had known. Every vendor, every deposit, the Fox Theater, the catering, the floral design, $40,000. Her name, her business, her signature. Vivian's smile held with the effort of someone gripping a railing in a storm. Keisha, sweetheart, this really isn't the... I want to play something, Keisha said. She pressed her screen, and Vivian Washington's voice, relaxed, private, completely unperformed, filled that room on Andrews Drive. The recording was 8 months old. Keisha had found it 4 days earlier, going back through everything with new eyes. Made at a lunch Keisha did not know was being recorded, Vivian had the habit, mentioned once by her housekeeper, of placing her phone face down but leaving the voice memo running. In the recording, Vivian's voice was warm, confiding, the voice she kept for people she trusted. The woman will pay for everything if we handle it correctly. She is desperate to be included. That type always is. Keisha is embarrassed by her. Honestly, who could blame her? But she will use her. After the wedding, we distance gradually. Mother-in-law complications, the usual. Loretta goes back to her cleaning work, and we move forward without the complication. The recording ended. 40 people, crystal glasses, white peonies, and a silence so complete you could hear the traffic on Peachtree Road outside. For Vivian, that recording was not just humiliating, it was a structural collapse. Everything she had built in that room, every implication, every redirect, dismantled in 45 seconds by her own voice. She had no defense because the prosecution was her own words. For Keisha, this is what stays with me. She sacrificed everything she had spent years building in that world, her standing in that room, her relationship with Marcus's family, the version of herself that was polished and arrived and no longer the daughter of a woman who cleaned floors. She gave it all up in the time it takes to press a button. That is not a small thing. That is an enormous thing. And it was the most important thing she had ever done. Vivian's face had gone the specific gray of a woman whose performance has been dismantled in public by her own voice. Her gold earrings caught the chandelier light and glittered against her suddenly still expression. Marcus was near the kitchen doorway, hands in his pockets, head down, the posture of a man who had known something was coming and chose again and again to say nothing. Keisha turned to him. The room turned with her. You knew, she said, not a question. He did not answer. Marcus, did you know about the debt? The mortgage on this house? He looked up. His jaw worked. Keisha, can we talk about this and... Did you know your mother planned to cut my mother off after the wedding? After she paid for every single piece of it? Silence. That silence was his answer. I had seen the outline of that cowardice from the beginning. I had talked myself out of trusting what I saw. His silence in that moment was not surprise. It was confirmation. Keisha turned to face the full room, shoulders back, chin level. In that moment, she looked exactly like me. The me at her age who decided a man who packed a bag was not worth chasing. The me who picked up a mop and built something instead. I owe everyone in this room an apology, she said. I allowed myself to be ashamed of my mother. I let someone tell me that what she does, what her hands look like, was something to manage. To seat in row 6 of a wedding she was paying for entirely, her voice caught on row 6. Just slightly. Just enough. My mother built a company. She raised me alone from the time I was 4 years old. She signed every contract for this wedding because she loves me, and because I let her when somewhere I knew something was wrong. She looked at me then, across that room, in my navy dress with my rough hands and 35 years of early mornings in my face. Mama, she said, I am so sorry. I walked toward my daughter, held up my hands, both of them, open, scarred, swollen at the knuckles. The hands that had cleaned floors and written checks and never once let go of her when it mattered. 40 years, I said quietly. These hands bought everything in this room worth having, the money and the dignity both. Keisha took my hands in hers, both of them. in front of every person in that room, and she did not let go. Then she turned to the mantel, looked at her engagement ring for a long moment, the way you look at something you loved before you understood what it was costing you. She removed it, set it beside the white peonies. "I am not getting married tonight," she said, "or in 3 weeks. I will not get married until I know who I am becoming, and I need my mother for that." Vivian made a sound between a protest and a gasp, but the room had already shifted, completely and permanently. The way a room shifts when truth has been spoken out loud by the one person with the most to lose by speaking it. I stood there holding my daughter's hands and understood. I had not lost $40,000. I had spent it on something worth infinitely more. And standing in that room, it had just been returned to me in full. And what Keisha did with the money and the pain in the weeks that followed is the part of this story that will stay with you longest. The money came back. Sandra Freeman is very good at her job. Within 2 weeks, every deposit had been formally returned or credited. The Fox Theater, the caterer, the florist, every vendor whose contract had my name on it. The language she had quietly embedded in those documents 8 weeks earlier did exactly what she had designed it to do. Material breach of good faith. Failure to disclose known financial encumbrances. Documented. Clean. $40,000 returned. Vivian Washington did not fight it. I think the recording had taken something out of her. Not her pride exactly, but her appetite for a public battle. I heard through Lupe she had stopped attending certain Thursday evenings at the Cherokee Town and Country Club. I ran into her once, about 6 weeks after everything. Publix on Ponce de Leon. She was in the cereal aisle. She saw me first. I watched her face do something complicated, a series of small internal adjustments, and then she turned her cart and went the other direction without a word. I picked up my granola, put it in my basket, went about my Tuesday. Marcus did not contact Keisha after that night, not once. That silence told me everything about what he would have been in the hard moments of a marriage. He had shown it clearly, repeatedly, in the softest possible circumstances. Keisha moved back to Atlanta within the month, an apartment on DeKalb Avenue, 12 minutes from my house on Constitution Road. She started seeing a therapist, a decision she made entirely on her own, which told me it was the right one. She went every Thursday morning and never once made it sound like a burden. She came for dinner on Thursdays after. We would sit on my back porch with the evening light going soft over the yard, the old lawn chair with the bent armrest, our coffee going cold the way it always does when we talk too long. And she would talk, the real version of herself, not the adjusted version she had developed fitting the shape Vivian Washington decided she should occupy. I want to say something about how Vivian's manipulation worked on Keisha because I think it matters. Keisha is not weak. She is not foolish. What worked was not her naivety. It was that Vivian found the exact place where she was most vulnerable. The fear that where she came from would define the ceiling of where she could go. That fear is real, and it lives in the hearts of many children who watch their parents work themselves to the bone so the child would not have to. Vivian identified that fear with the precision of a surgeon and pressed on it quietly and consistently for years. Every instruction dressed as protection. I am helping you become who you want to be. That is the particular cruelty of that kind of manipulation. It disguises itself as love. Keisha was not foolish. She was exploited at the exact point of her deepest wound. Understanding that does not erase what she did, but it replaces contempt with compassion. And compassion is a better foundation for rebuilding than blame. One Thursday, she told me about the years of small instructions. Do not bring your mother to work events. It makes Marcus's colleagues uncomfortable. Do not mention where you grew up. Dress her in something dark. Keep her in row 6. Each one delivered gently, wrapped in the language of consideration. We want everyone to be comfortable. She told me you made Marcus's colleagues uncomfortable, Keisha said, turning her coffee cup in her hands. That you were a reminder of where he came from before the scholarship. She said I should think about whether certain associations were helping me build my future or holding me back. And what did you say? I asked. I said okay, quietly. I kept going to those events alone and told myself I was protecting you from an uncomfortable situation. But I was protecting myself from the discomfort of being seen next to you by people whose opinion I had decided mattered more than it should have. I know, I said. She looked up. You knew? I knew the night you introduced me at your firm's holiday party as, "My mom's here, she just stopped by." Like I was a package left on the porch. Her eyes went bright, that jaw muscle pulled tight. I was ashamed, she said. I am ashamed of that. You were afraid, I said. That is different. Fear can be worked through. Shame is what fear leaves behind when you don't do the work, but you are doing it now. How are you this calm about all of it? She asked. I was angry, I said, for a long time. The quiet kind that doesn't show because you have been carrying things your whole life and you know how to keep moving while something hurts. But anger is not where I want to live. I have too much building left to do. 3 months after Andrew's drive, Keisha came to my office carrying a cardboard box. Inside, a spiral notebook, purple cover, her name in a 12-year-old's handwriting, and underneath it, a sealed envelope. Found these packing up my apartment in Buckhead, she said. A box from Grandma's house I had never fully gone through. I opened the notebook first, her 6th grade diary. Drawings, lists, a pressed flower from a Stone Mountain field trip, and near the middle, a page that stopped me cold. Today, Mama came to pick me up from the debate competition. She still had her work uniform on. I could see some of the other kids noticing. My face got hot. But then she hugged me in front of everyone, and she smelled like lemons and clean floors, and I thought, nobody loves me the way she does. Nobody in the entire world. My throat tightened like a fist. Then I opened the envelope. A photograph, blurry, taken at night without a flash. The exterior of Tuskegee Airmen Global Academy, the parking lot, the side entrance lit from within, and standing there, in her work uniform, holding a mop, me. Watching through the glass as a younger Keisha accepted an academic award on a stage I could not reach from outside. A handwritten note with it, Keisha's adult handwriting. I asked the custodian inside to take this photo that night. I kept it all these years because I wanted to remember where you were every time I thought you weren't there. You were always there, Mama. I just couldn't see the window from where I was standing. I put the photograph down on my desk, put my face in my rough hands, and I cried. Not the quiet kind, the full kind, the releasing kind, the kind that means something has finally been set down. The Front Row Fund was Keisha's idea. She brought it to my kitchen table one Saturday with a typed 1-page summary, sliding it across with something careful in her expression. A nonprofit, seeded with $40,000, the exact amount returned from the wedding contracts to the last dollar. Emergency financial support, professional development, and community connection for working women over 50. Women who had built things with their hands and their pre-dawn mornings. Women who had been moved to row 6 in their own lives. I want you to be the founding director, Keisha said. Your name first, your face on the materials. Front row, always. We will need a proper board, I said. Sandra Freeman already agreed, and Lupe drafted the entire community outreach plan without being asked. She sent it at 6:30 in the morning. I laughed, the real kind, from the belly. No, I said, she would not wait to be asked. I signed the founding documents at my kitchen table, the one with the wobbly left leg. And what happened at the first Front Row Fund event is where this story becomes something larger than one mother and one daughter. The healing did not happen all at once. This is not that kind of story. There were still nights I lay awake hearing those 8 words in the dark. You can still come, if you're paying, just not front row. Still mornings I pulled into a job site and felt the long shadow of all those years of doing everything right and still being made to feel like an inconvenience. Moments when grief, not anger, just plain grief, surfaced without warning, the way it does. But those mornings got shorter, and what grew between them got larger. About a month after we filed the incorporation papers, Keisha called on a Tuesday night, nearly 11 o'clock. She still had her work blazer on when she showed up at my door 15 minutes later, heels in one hand. "I want to come on a shift with you," she said. "With my hands, not just in my head." I went to the closet and got her a pair of work gloves. We drove to a medical center in Decatur, a building my crew cleaned 3 nights a week. She watched. Then she worked. Her hands were soft. They blistered before we were 2 hours in. She kept going. Around 2 in the morning, in a long hallway under the blue white of institutional fluorescence, she leaned on her mop and looked at me with something exhausted and real in her face. "Mama, how did you do this? Every night, for years." "I thought about what I was building," I said. "I thought about you." She nodded, looked down at her blistered hands, then up. "I am going to build something too," she said. "I know," I said. "Will you help me?" I put my arm around her shoulders, this tall, elegant daughter of mine, hair coming loose, wearing borrowed gloves with Hayes Commercial Cleaning on the cuff, and said, "Baby, I have been helping you since before you could walk. That does not have an end." She leaned her head on my shoulder. The blistered hands mattered. The 2 a.m. mattered. Not as a lesson Keisha was performing, but as a genuine physical experience of what her mother's life had actually been. There is a kind of understanding that only lives in the body, that the mind can get close to but never fully reach. Keisha had known, the way you know things you have been told, that I had cleaned floors for 35 years. But standing in that hallway with burning palms and a mop in her hands, she understood it, bone deep. And that changed something between us that words, however sincere, could not have. Healing is not primarily a conversation. It is a series of shared experiences that gradually replace the old story with a truer one. 1 month after the fund was incorporated, Keisha organized an appreciation event for my employees. 60 people, a private dining room on Auburn Avenue in Sweet Auburn, the old neighborhood, the one that has always understood what it means to build from almost nothing. Speeches, real food, a slideshow of the company's history, Route 9, the first bucket, the first van, the first office on Memorial Drive, the contracts, the crews, 60 people who started somewhere small and kept showing up. And at the front of that room, set apart from the other chairs, one seat, a handmade sign in Keisha's handwriting. "Reserved for Loretta Hayes, founder, mother, front row, forever." I stood in the doorway for a full minute before I walked in, looked at my 60 people, each with their own early mornings and heavy things to carry. Looked at that chair. Then I walked to the front of the room in my good navy dress and I sat down. I took up exactly the space I had always deserved. All of it. Not apologetically. Front row. My name on the sign. On my back porch a few weeks later, I said to Keisha, "Real love, the kind worth having, does not ask you to pay with your dignity. It does not seat you in the back so someone else looks better at the front. When a person holds out their hand for what you have while turning their face from who you are, that is not a relationship. That is a transaction, and you are not a service." Keisha was quiet, coffee turning slowly in her hands. "How do you know when love is real?" she asked. "When the person is not ashamed of you," I said, "even when it costs them something to say so." She sat with that. "I think I knew Marcus was not that," she said, "for longer than I admitted." "Knowing takes courage," I said. "Acting on it takes more. You acted in front of 40 people. You chose yourself, and you chose me." "It took everything I had," she said quietly. "And you still have everything," I said. "That is the truth about courage. It spends you all the way down to what you thought was the bottom, and then you find out there was more underneath. There always is." The Front Row Fund completed its first year with 37 women served. Cleaning women, cafeteria workers, home health aides, seamstresses, women who built things with their bodies while the world conducted its business elsewhere. Each one sits in the front row of her own welcome ceremony. Each one receives a handwritten letter from the founding director. That is me, in my good navy dress, rough hands, 35 years of showing up written into my face. Keisha runs the program operations with the precision and determination she brings to everything when she is fully, freely herself. At our first public event, she introduced me as my mother, Loretta Hayes, who taught me that the most valuable real estate in any room is the front row, and that you do not need anyone's permission to claim what was always yours. I cried. I will not pretend otherwise. Lupe Thompson, sitting beside me in the front row where she always sits, handed me a paper napkin and said, loud enough for 3 rows to hear, "Lord Almighty, I have been waiting 30 years for that woman to cry in public." The room laughed. I laughed too. And the laughing felt like something being released, something held for a very long time finally being allowed to go. I still clean floors sometimes, not because the company needs me to, because my hands remember what it means to make something clean. Because there is dignity in that work, and the dignity was always mine, and no seating chart or cream-colored letter ever actually took it away. They only made me carry it somewhere less visible for a while. My daughter knows that now. She learned it standing in a hallway at 2 a.m. with blistered hands, understanding in her body what love looks like when it is honest and unashamed and does not require an audience to be real. It does not look like a ceremony at the Fox Theater with chandeliers and white peonies. It looks like 2 women, side by side, doing the necessary work, unhurried, unashamed, together. This story teaches us that real love never asks you to pay with your dignity, that generosity freely given is a gift, and the moment someone mistakes it for desperation, the moment they take what you have while turning their face from who you are not only permitted to close that hand, you are required to. It teaches us that manipulation does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, dressed in social grace and family tradition. It counts on your love being stronger than your self-protection. The answer is not to love less. It is to understand that loving yourself is not the opposite of loving your child. It is the foundation that makes everything else possible. It teaches us that the word no, spoken without apology by a woman who knows her worth, is one of the most complete sentences there is. It needs no explanation, only the courage to say it and the self-respect to mean it. And it teaches us that the most valuable thing a mother can give her daughter is not money, not connections, not a seat at the right table. It is the lived, daily proof that she deserves the front row. And the courage, when someone tries to move her back, to take it anyway. Loretta Hayes never forgot that. And in the end, neither did her daughter. If this story moves something in you, if you have ever been quietly moved to the back of something you built, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because somewhere right now, there is a woman with rough hands and an embroidered name on her shirt who needs to know her chair is waiting, right up front, where it has always belonged.